Here we go, Biology B students. Lesson 2.3, the importance of macromolecules. So some of the things you need to know by the time you are finished with the lesson have the ability to relate the importance of carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids to living things, including enzymes. So, and why are these things important to us? Investigate and explain the factors that affect enzyme function. So again, big, massive molecules. That's the name macro means big. Molecules. In introduction, all compounds can be classified in two broad categories. Organic compounds contain carbon and hydrogen atoms. Inorganic compounds can have one or the other, but generally do not contain both. Most of your body's molecules are organic compounds. Macromolecules are built from small organic compounds the same way a railroad train is built, by linking a lot of smaller units together into long chains, much like the picture. Large carbon compounds are built up from smaller, simpler molecules called monomers. Mono meaning one. Monomers combine to form one another. We call that condensation. Remember, we removed the water molecule to connect the two monomers. Complex molecules known as polymers, right? So as we build them up, we're starting to make a massive molecule. So if we look at our picture here, okay, so this is the monomer, and this long chain of them connected together would be a polymer. Every place where they're linked, we remove the water molecule. Monomers link to form polymers through a chemical reaction called dehydration synthesis. All right, so why are these things important? Well, if you look at the picture, you can see all of those things are pretty important to our health. So carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids, you can see how we are going to obtain the first three, by eating various types of foods. So carbohydrates give us the breads, the pastas, the rice, pastries, sweets, proteins, your meats, nuts, those types of things, and your lipids are your fats. So carbohydrates, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, atoms in a proportion of 1 to 2 to 1. That's the general formula, CH2O, and then you can have many of those individual monomers connected, where N is the number of carbon atoms. And then the example would be a sugar glucose, or something like a maltose connected together. Thus, its chemical formula is C6H12O6. The monomers of carbohydrates are called monosaccharides. Saccharides kind of like a sugar stick. So monosaccharides are simple sugars. Glucose is found in blood of animals, galactose found in milk, and fructose commonly found in fruit. Glucose and fructose both have the same chemical formula. However, the arrangement of the atoms is a little different. In such cases, those compounds are called isomers. So all carbohydrates consist of this, right? A monosaccharide. Two of them together is a disaccharide, and if you put them all together, you have a polysaccharide. Disaccharides contain two monosaccharides joined together through dehydration synthesis or condensation. Lactose, commonly found in milk, is made up of galactose plus a glucose monomer. Sucrose, table sugar, transported in plants, is made up of fructose and glucose. Polysaccharides are carbohydrates formed from linking individual sugars into long chains. Starch, a common storage form of glucose in plants. Cellulose, a polysaccharide contained in the cell wall of plants, gives strength and rigidity to the plant cells. And then glycogen, a common storage form of glucose in animals, stored in the muscles and the liver to be used as quick energy. Lipids, you can see how long these chains are. Lipids, classification of macromolecules that do not dissolve in water. So fats, oils, waxes are all examples of lipids. Lipids usually serve one of three functions. energy storage, structural support, serve as reactants, starting materials for metabolic reactions. Fatty acids are building blocks or monomers that make up most lipids. Fatty acids are classified either as saturated or unsaturated, and the classification depends on the portion of hydrogen atoms to carbon bonds in the molecule. So if you look here, all of these carbons are connected by single bonds. So it is fully saturated. In other words, each one of these carbons cannot hold any more hydrogens, right? Remember, if you remember the unique part about carbon, there's 1 bond, 2 bonds, 3 bonds, 4 bonds, right? That's unique to carbon. If you look at this carbon right here, it's 4 bonds, but it has a double bond here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 bonds around those 2. And then 1 over here and 1 over here. So when that double bond does take place, it doesn't have the full complement of hydrogens. You can see we removed a couple. And we have a little kink here. So the difference being this at room temperature is a solid. This at room temperature is a liquid, all right? Because they can't tightly bind together because of this kink. So there's spaces and holes. So this is like butter and this is oil. Saturated fatty acids have the maximum number of bonds possible. They are full. Saturated fats are usually solid at room temperature and most come from animal products. So there's examples of various kinds of fatty acids. Unsaturated acids have double bonds in the carbon chain and are not full. Most unsaturated fats are liquid at room temperature and usually referred to as oils. So liquid oils are the example of unsaturated fats. They are considered healthier. Trans fat. Trans fat can make food taste good, last longer on grocery store shelves, however, are more hazardous for your heart. Trans fats raise your bad cholesterol, just like saturated fats, but they also increase inflammation and lower the good cholesterol. Trans fats formed during food processing. This type of trans fat is created when hydrogen is added to vegetable oil, a process called hydrogenation. So we break those double bonds, and so there's no more kinks in the chain. Partially hydrogenated oils are used by food manufacturers to improve the texture, shelf life, and flavor stability. Half of the trans fat Americans consume is formed during food processing, and partially hydrogenated oils are the main source of this type of trans fat in the US. Saturated animal fats are associated with circulatory disorders. Plant oils can be substituted for animal fats in the diet. A common lipid that contains fatty acids is triglyceride. Triglycerides, referred to as neutral fats, are a glycerol linked to 3 fatty acids in the shape of an E by condensation reactions. Lard from pigs makes bacon taste yummy, but not necessarily great for you. Phospholipids. So here you see phosphorus chains. So here's one phospholipid. Here's another phospholipid chain. The lipid bilayer is a universal component of cell membranes. Structural components provide the barrier that marks the boundaries of a cell. Most abundant class of lipid molecule found in cell membranes. Phospholipids organize themselves in a bilayer to hide the hydrophobic, doesn't like, tail regions, and expose the hydrophilic, loves water. So you have a hydrophilic tail, right, which is hydrophobic tail, and a hydrophilic, the red region. So one's going to attract water and one's not going to not like the water. Proteins are examples, organic compounds proteins are organic compounds composed mainly of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen atoms. Proteins are the construction materials for body parts such as hair, skin, nails, and blood. Amino acids are building blocks or monomers that make up most proteins. There are 20 different kinds of amino acids that humans use. One important group of proteins, enzymes, help control chemical reactions by acting as a catalyst. They speed up the reaction. Otherwise, the reaction would take too long and not be functional. So enzymes, a form of a protein, are going there to help speed up a process, speed up the combination of element X and element Y together to make a new compound. Proteins, vegetarians pay attention. The term complete protein refers to amino acids, the building blocks of the protein. There are 20 different amino acids that can form a protein and 9 that the body can't produce on its own. These are called essential amino acids. We need to eat them because we can't make them. In order to be considered complete, a protein must contain all 9 of these essential amino acids in roughly equal amounts. Some non-meat suggestions for foods with many amino acids: quinoa, buckwheat, hemp seed, chia, soy, mycoprotein, like think mushrooms, rice and beans, hummus and pita are all various foods you can take in that will give you a decent amount of amino acids. Why should I care about proteins and amino acids? Amino acids are like letters of the alphabet. How many words can you make from 26 letters? Can you spell cat without the letter T? In other words, you can't make a certain protein if you don't have a certain amino acid. You can't spell a word. If you don't think about, you're at McDonald's and the boss says, go out there and put up on the sign, Big Macs are 2 for $1. And so you go and look at your box of letters, but you don't have a B for big. So you can't put up Ig Mac is 2 for $1. So just like this, you have to consume the right amounts and the proper ones so that you can make your proteins be healthy. Unless you eat the essential amino acids, you might not be able to make an important protein like fibrinogen, which helps clot blood when you get a cut. So our final macromolecule is the nucleic acids, DNA and RNA. Nucleic acids are complex organic molecules that store genetic information. Nucleotides are the building blocks. Nucleotides consist of the base, the sugar, and the phosphate. We have our 3 different types of 3 main types of nucleic acids. DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, is the genetic information inside the nucleus. Ribonucleic acid, instructions which code for protein synthesis using the DNA template, right? So you get the information from the DNA, it is read and copied onto the RNA. And then we have ATP, adenosine triphosphate, has a slightly different structure than DNA and RNA. It contains a base, a sugar, and 3 phosphates. So if you look here, this is our ATP group. All the energy in ATP is in these bonds. Okay. If you need to get some more information, you can follow along with these links. If you click on them in the regular presentation, plenty of information for you. That will end 2.3.